Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we finally got some updates on Season of Discovery, more information on world layering and how it's affecting players, a major patch that just went live that changed raid logs pretty significantly, even more community comments, changes to Waylaid supplies, and so much more. My name is Sky from The Comeback Is. This is your Season of Discovery news. Grab a cup of coffee, sit down. We got a lot to discuss. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I guess you should just face it. If you aren't the metaspec for your class, it's close to impossible to get into a Nomergan when you're trying to join a pug. It's actually gotten so bad to the point where people are actually paying gold to the raid leader to even attempt to get into the raid. As you can see on screen here, you can see a Retribution Paladin saying they know the fights, they have consumables and the world buffs, and they're paying 10G to get a part of the raid group. Then you have a rogue stating how they have world buffs, 6 out of 6 experience, consumables, and even paying 20G. Now, I've seen a lot of things inside of World of Warcraft. I've seen people pay for boosts through raids and dungeons. I've seen people pay for items to get their characters the best gear in the game. I've seen players pay for summons and portals across the world, but never in my history of playing WoW have I ever seen players pay to participate in a raid inside of classic World of Warcraft. I mean, I think we can all agree that Nomergan is definitely a step up compared to Black Fathom Deeps in terms of, you know, dodging mechanics and group coordination, because if you don't, your raid will just simply wipe. But let's be honest here, ladies and gentlemen, all it takes is some explanations and coordination from a few people, and you can down just about any boss in there with any comp possible, especially if you looked up the fight guides online. Now, I'm not going to lie though, Retribution Paladin and Rogues aren't in the best places right now in terms of raw damage and raid potential, but I know for a fact you can bring any spec in there and clear it no problem if you're dedicated enough. Are you clearing the raid right now as an off-meta spec? I don't know, something like Feral Druid tanks or Rogue tanks or even maybe Frost Mage or something crazy like that? Let us know about it in the comment section below. Speaking of spending gold on crazy things in Season of Discovery, it seems as if players are quitting the game because of how many gold sinks there are in this phase, stating how they've seen enough and they put gold walls on everything. The gold sinks are atrocious, and it's made me not even want to play an alternate character. 100 gold for a mount, 15 gold here, 15 gold there to craft your items. Then you need to pay gold for the actual pattern, and if you're running 2 crafting professions, you need to double that as well. You have your consumables, your buffs, all this just simply costs too much money, and it's atrocious. Now, I think it's important to understand something very clearly, ladies and gentlemen. Season of Discovery is not a version of World of Warcraft that is simply meant to be easy just because it's a season and the content is capped at level 40. Now, the fact is that it's based off of classic World of Warcraft, which typically means that you need to grind and earn everything you need to acquire. I mean, are you really upset that within a week and a half of the phase being launched, you can't just craft 2 epic item slots because it's too expensive, or that you have to spend 100 gold on your mount, or even buy consumables to make your character just a small percentage stronger to down the hardest bosses in the game? I mean, isn't this all the best part of an MMORPG? I mean, the grind toward progressing your character slowly but surely with advancements in gameplay and mechanics, which makes this, in my opinion, the greatest thing Blizzard's created for World of Warcraft in a long time. I mean, you can't forget that Season of Discovery is meant to be played like an old-school style RPG, you know, focusing on experience and discovery with modern gameplay mechanics and integrations, which is the reason why it's become so popular with everybody today. Yes, it seems like a grind to make an alternate character and achieve everything you've already done on your main character, but that's kind of the point here, is it not? I mean, we're going to be inside of this phase for the next 3 months. I honestly prefer it to be a grind and tough rather than accomplish everything within, I guess, the first month of playing the game. Now, Blizzard has made it also apparent that they have made some changes to layers inside of Season of Discovery to not auto-collapse, which will make the world feel less full during off-peak times. Players, even like myself, have definitely noticed the population around me seem to feel kind of empty in a way. Even some players stating over on Twitter that they are concerned because across every single layer, capital cities just feel dead. Agron replies to this simply stating that the players are still there, we just stopped collapsing the layers dynamically to get through the holiday weekend, and there's more to come this week. Not only that, there are people taking to the forums as well stating that the world feels dead and that they can't find anybody. Capital cities outside of Scarlet Monastery and even inside of Stranglethorn Vale used to be stacked with players. If they've done some of the layering, fix it because the world feels dead. Now, of course, it's very easy for us on the outside looking in to just point out all the mistakes and problems the developers are making. And I do have to agree, though, that I would much rather have the world feel overpopulated, whether it be fighting for mob tags or getting ganked too much by the opposing faction in PvP or even competing for gathering materials, than not seeing anybody and participating in any sort of player-driven activities. I mean, personally, I would prefer the world to feel overpopulated rather than it feel empty like a desolate wasteland. Because this could very easily affect people's mental about how they see the game with a less than a week ago, you know, the game being so populated you can't go 5 seconds without seeing somebody, to now you don't really see players for sometimes at like 15, 20 minutes at a time. And it could really be discouraging toward the longevity and health of the Season of Discovery player base, even though it could be entirely untrue. So hopefully they make a change sometime this week and revert this back and get a fix on it as soon as possible when it comes to layering. Now, of course, Blizzard did hint also at some class changes earlier last week, but it looks like they were officially implemented as of Tuesday morning, so we just wanted to quickly take some time, let it marinate, go over them as they're very important in this week's raid logs. The biggest changes being the buffs to Enhancement Shaman's damage overall using dual wield and other weapon imbuements, the buffs to Feral Druid with their threat generation with swipe being increased, as well as Berserk giving your Lacerate an AoE effect, Priest damage getting buffed by 10% on Mind Spike and Void Plague, but a nerf on Shadow Ward Death. All those sort of things that we spoke about last week have been officially implemented, but there were a couple new additions that they added last minute, including to the Rogue's Shuriken Toss bounce range being reduced to 10 yards to kind of reduce the chance at which, you know, you pull other mobs inside of the dungeon. I'm sure that was really, really annoying. Hunter Raptor Strike damage with the Melee Specialist rune being activated is now normalized weapon damage instead, so a little bit of a nerf there. You know, so with all those class changes being implemented, now how do the raid logs stand as of this week, which is a really big question. Well, we got a lot of changes to go through, so let's jump right into it. Starting off, reigning supreme on the DPS meters now, we have a brand new king, the Fire Mage. This class has just jumped almost 20 total score points in a week's time, making it one of the most drastic changes I personally have ever seen on the raid log counter. This class brings just about everything you need in a raid with high mobility, great AoE damage, consistent single target damage, utility, you name it. This class has it. Fire Mage is absolutely smashing right now on all cylinders. Next up, we have the Melee Hunter, which didn't necessarily drop in points and is still a phenomenal class to bring inside of your raid group. They have great utility with Aspect of the Lion and the highest single target melee DPS spec in the game. I mean, it will always make this class wanted. And the last class, pulling the far away from everybody else, is going to be your Destruction Warlock. It's no surprise that these 3 specs are on the top, you know, pulling away from everyone else, because if you look at the top 100 logs, it's pretty much full of all 3 of these class specs over and over and over again. The Destruction Warlock has a fun and engaging rotation that absolutely annihilates bosses inside of Nomergan. Next here, we have the Shadow Priest, Enhancement, and Elemental Shaman. And boy, oh boy, this is where things start to get a little bit spicy here. Shadow Priest did drop a few DPS slots due to Shadow Ward Death getting nerfed, and their damage over time effects not really scaling as well as the other classes like on-demand burst damage. But either way, they can pretty much infinitely cast all their spells due to all their mana regeneration, and the damage over time effects are helping them with mobility aspects in the raid during boss fights as well. Enhancement Shamans, to everyone's surprise though, is making the biggest leap in one single patch I've ever seen, going from the second to last DPS, going all the way up to top 5 overall. The weapon imbuement buffs are fantastic, with using Wind Fury on your main hand and Rockbiter on your offhand. You have tons of attack power and mana regeneration for your group. You bring amazing utility. You can do your damage all on the move while you're being mobile. A fantastic spec overall, which can easily push them into the S tier category based off their damage and utility. Additionally, Elemental Shamans are staying exactly where they were at before. They are also dominating as well with all their big burst damage and utility they bring at range, making them viable for any raid comp out there. In the next tier, we have Warrior, Arcane Mage, and Rogue. In our previous video, we did tell everyone not to worry about Warrior, as the second they get some gear, they're going to start pretty much outscaling anybody. And lo and behold, they just jumped up 2 DPS slots in 1 week, even when the class had no class changes done to them. Not only that, it's only a point or 2 behind Elemental and Enhancement Shaman. So my guess is that within the next week or so, it could easily jump into the top 5 DPS slot in this phase. So hang in there, Warriors. I promise things are going to get even better. Arcane Mage has actually dropped significantly in terms of DPS rankings, not because of the class getting nerfed or anything like that, just simply because other classes getting buffed and acquiring new gear is just becoming a lot more impactful to those said specs, such as Warriors, Enhancement Shamans, and Elemental Shamans. Arcane Mages still bring great utility if you want to off-heal with regeneration, so this class will always be viable as well. To everybody's surprise, also, DPS Rogue is continuing to drop lower and lower compared to the other classes out there, and it's starting to worry even me at this point. They don't bring any utility, their damage is pretty low. They don't bring any specific debuffs. I mean, I'm going to be honest here. Rogue, in terms of PvP, is in a very rough spot right now, and we're hoping to see some changes moving forward from the PvE side of it. And finally, we have our bottom tier with the Balance and Feral Druid, Retribution Paladin, and Marksmanship Hunter. Now, both DPS specs for Druid have dropped significantly and are definitely on the low end of the damage meters. They do make up for it with some incredible utility with Rebirth, Innervate, Mark of the Wild, and other group-wide buffs, but their damage is just so low, and I'm definitely hoping they get some buffs very soon. Retribution Paladin saw buffs recently, but it doesn't seem to be helping their case in terms of raid encounters because they dropped over 3 DPS spots. I don't think things are going to get better for them anytime soon if they don't get buffs. They're lacking single target damage. It's just not high enough, and this class definitely needs some help in the raiding environment. And finally, you have the Marksmanship Hunter, which is the bottom of the barrel in terms of DPS. They don't bring much utility other than Aspect of the Lion. Their damage is lackluster, and they don't have any debuffs to apply to the boss to even bring them in that sense. Once again, Marksmanship Hunter, desperate need of buffs, so hopefully the class can get some love in the next couple weeks. Moving on to the healing logs, Resto Druid has surprisingly taken the top spot in terms of raw healing per second. I mean, the #1 ranked Resto Druid in the world has just Wild Growth healing, as 93% of his overall healing, which means you can pretty much spam Wild Growth on cooldown and parse incredibly well in this class. Your spread AoE healing is just truly unmatched for Resto Druid. Your utility is through the roof with Rebirth and Innervate, making this spec just a powerhouse inside of the raiding environment, especially since there's a lot of raid-wide damage in Novergan, so this class performs well. Priest did drop to 2nd overall, unfortunately, in raw healing, but that definitely doesn't mean they're worse than the Resto Druid instantly. They do have the highest single target healing in the game and some of the most mana-efficient spells out there that heal for, I mean, so much, like Penance, Empowered Renew, and Prayer Amending. So, my personal opinion, I would still take a Priest over a Resto Druid, simply because their versatility is just so much higher in the healing department with how they can cover all bases from single target healing to area of effect. To my biggest surprise, the Arcane Mage Healer has actually taken up the 3rd healing spot and is now becoming a serious powerhouse inside of the raid as well. Not only do they deal consistent damage, they are pumping out healing with their new runes, and it's like, overall, one of the most fun rotations in the game in terms of a healer damage mixture. Overall, the Mage is a great DPS, a healer hybrid, really, really solid to bring to your raid. Just below Mage, we do have the Holy Paladin, which is performing really good as well, just not as some of the other classes. Beacon of Light and Sacred Shield is fantastic in the sense of just, you know, casting those abilities, forgetting about it, and going about your normal rotation. And the Holy Shock mana refund recently that was fixed is helping them out significantly as well. They bring all their bubbles, their blessings, amazing cooldowns like Lay on Hands. This is a fantastic healer to bring to your raid that honestly I really desperately miss having on the Horde. And last but not least, once again, we have the Restoration Shaman. Honestly, this class is just missing some really viable healing runes. Healing Rain is just hard to use considering a lot of the fights in Nomergan are mobile. Earthshield just simply doesn't match up compared to some of the other healing runes out there, and honestly, they desperately needed a rune like Riptide for, you know, on-demand healing that can provide some temporary health buffs as well to a tank. And they bring great utility with their totems, yes, but their healing is just a little low right now, and I'm hoping this class gets some buffs and love in the nearby future. Additionally, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like they are adding new Waylaid supplies, as, you know, what we have as of right now is really just lackluster. They state that they want to add a new Revered Reputation rewards, and they originally planned to do it as of Tuesday, the other day, but they had a technical snag with some of the new rewards because they were actually unique to WoW, so that's going to be really interesting to see. They state that it will be on a short delay, and they're working on putting the rewards in place, and we'll share some info on them very soon. So hopefully, ladies and gentlemen, we can get some potentially really cool class-specific rewards or new recipes or something brand new inside of the Waylaid Supply Reputation vendor. Could be really, really cool and exciting. Now, just like that, ladies and gentlemen, seems like we're at our community section part of the video where we take your opinions and comments from below in the comment section, shout them out, and discuss them. So if you have something to comment about Season of Discovery so far in Phase 2, let the developers and the players know about it in the comment section below so we can highlight it in these videos. Starting off with our first comment, we have Heisenberg stating, "This is great news as a main tank druid. I specifically recall commenting on a Phase 1 video that they need better AoE threat holding. I guess the developers listened. How cool is that? Keep up the great content. You guys are the best." Yeah, I mean, I'm really happy that they buffed Swipe for bear druids out there. I was just personally really hoping that they would have implemented Thrash in there as well to sort of like, you know, have some consistent AoE in there with some bleeds and, you know, you swap over to Swipe afterwards. I always felt like that 1-2 1-2 punch combo has always been really strong for Guardian Druids. Just hope they implement it sometime in the future. Overall, they're doing really good with the balancing so far, with the buffing and nerfing of classes, so let's just hope they, continue to go along that route. Speaking of buffs, though, we have Zachary Cluin stating, Range Hunter needs a lot of help. They need to buff Steady Shot, they need to buff Kill Command for Range Beast Mastery, buff Sniper Training to even make Marksman remotely decent. Even with all these 3 range buffs, probably will be mid, at best, not useless. Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with it being a very big surprise today to wake up and see Marksman Hunter as the second to last DPS logs this phase. I was really hoping they do something to fix this class because I think it's just an iconic class spec out there in World of Warcraft, shooting as a ranger. That's just meant for pure heavy-hitting DPS. It just feels very off-putting that it's second to last right now above Frost Mage, considering the Hunter is the only pure DPS class in the game. And lastly, we have Adam Bicknell stating, I think it'd be awesome if they offered a max-level version of Dungeons, maybe something similar to Mythics in retail. It would just add additional things for people to enjoy. Now, I don't think they need to go as far as adding Mythic Plus system into, something like Season of Discovery, but however, I do really enjoy heroic dungeons with my guild, and, acquiring the tokens when you kill a boss and then go spending it at a vendor, pretty much how they did with the Burning Crusade, where you would get your tokens and you would use it to buy those rewards such as crafting recipes, trinkets, and other stuff like that. I feel like it would give us a lot more, to do in the end game, and it would create a really solid gameplay loop in some ways to maybe play with your friends or players to keep you consistently playing on your main character. I also really love selling some of the exclusive items that you would earn inside of Heroic Dungeons on the auction house, so maybe you can make a little bit more coin that way as well. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, leave a comment below for me to respond to it live here on these news videos to have a little bit of discussion point and talk about it, man. I would love to see you guys' opinions on topics in these videos. So, if you want your voice to be heard, let me know about it in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like and subscribe to get absolutely flooded with Season of Discovery content. I want to thank you all so much for watching this video. It is an absolute pleasure to be making content for you all. Until the very end, my name is Sky from the Comeback Kids. I will see you all in the next one. Peace.